Hey guys, time to make some money on the 2020 election campaign. Here's my free play. In 2016, we swept the board. We had Trump way early on in the process when there was a crowded field at 25-1 to win the presidency. And then prior to the election, we had Clinton to win the popular vote but lose the Electoral College at plus 5,000. We also won every state we wagered on. If you want to see my results for the 2016 election, just search at Handicapping on Twitter. Put in popular vote or Donald Trump, and my old tweets will resurface. Basically, when it comes to betting on politics, I find that even more than sports, it is extremely hard to not to get emotionally invested and bet with a clear mind. Remember, before I get into this video, I'm not here to discuss politics with you guys. And although you may think that I am, because a lot of my analysis are based on political opinions, again, I keep my emotions out of it. And I think to me it's even harder than in sports, because for people, when it's a sports team, even though you're emotionally invested, it's just there's really nothing tangible to it. You just decided that when you were 3 years old that you liked the sports team. When it comes to politics, people seem to get butthurt, and they feel like, oh my God, how am I going to wager on Donald Trump to win the presidency if I think there's value on wagering him? He's going to be so bad for this country. You really can't look at those factors. And I'll tell you guys one thing. If you bet the correct candidate and you make a couple of grand, odds are in most cases the money you're going to make betting on that candidate will probably be more than the slight difference in your tax return, unless you're a multimillionaire, or whatever other factor you actually think one candidate will be over the other. I mean, they are, unless you're a real, unless you like a fringe candidate, or you're a real progressive liberal, or real neoconservative, whatever you are, whatever you affiliate yourself with. But remember, keep in mind for this segment, we are trying to stay completely emotionally uninvested. We're simply going to look through the numbers, and I'm going to give you guys my opinion on where the value lies. So my wager is going to be on Bernie Sanders. He's currently about 25-1. He's currently 20 to 25-1 to win the general election. First of all, I'm going to explain to you why I think Trump will beat virtually any other candidate, and I will be betting on Trump as well. But I do believe that the one candidate he'll lose to is Bernie Sanders. First, let's go through the reasons why I think Trump is undervalued and why I think he is the favorite to be the next president of the United States. Now, first of all, before we get to the numbers, he's a master of free publicity. In any election cycle, this guy is the master at just getting free coverage. He manipulates the media, whether it's good coverage or bad coverage. The old adage is, all publicity is good publicity. CNN is going to be showing his empty podium before they show his challenger's actual policy speech. That's first of all. Second of all, which is this probably numbers-wise, this is the most important factor, is what the media seems to constantly forget. We heard the last election cycle about how the Matt favored Hillary, and she had a blue wall. What they don't understand, and it's actually surprising to me that nobody seems to get this. The electoral map. The Electoral College, the system that we abide by, favors the Republican candidate. It's simple. First of all, you have the simple math. Wyoming, a random state that's clearly in the red bracket, simply has more electoral votes, delegates, than a heavily populated state like California or New York. Meaning, it wasn't divided fairly. They haven't been updated. So per capita, for the amount of population, a state like Arizona, has more electoral votes per the actual size of its population than a state like California. That's just a simple fact, and it's an advantage that under our Constitution the Republican candidate has. So when you need 270 electoral votes to win an election, you can win an election by getting more electoral votes and losing the popular vote. Now, there's a reason why 2 of the last 5 elections have gone to the Republican candidate, while the Democratic candidate has won the popular vote. Now, the reason why the last election I wagered on Donald Trump, it was a parlay, meaning they both had to happen for the bet to win, on Donald Trump to win the Electoral College but lose the popular vote, was simple. There was a tremendous amount of hatred for Donald Trump. So you knew that Clinton was going to pile up the extra votes in places like California and New York, where she was going to win that state anyways. It was just the added hate vote. More of her supporters went out to vote simply because they hated Donald Trump. That wasn't going to help her in the swing states that she needed to win, where she was really unpopular. And don't get fooled by the fact that, somebody will tell you, yeah, well, Obama won California by even more votes than her. Hillary Clinton was an historically unpopular political candidate. Historically unpopular. She still got a large number of votes that she would never have gotten, even by disenchanted supporters, fringe supporters of hers, simply because they hated Donald Trump. So she was virtually guaranteed to win the popular vote simply based on the hate Trump factor. But in the swing states, where she performed poorly among independents, and even among her base, it was just going to be a tall order for her to win the Electoral College. There were too many swing states, and there were too many states which the mainstream media seemed to just write off as in her column, which I actually believed were swing states. And Trump just had to win his fair share of those, and he was going to win. He won the Electoral College comfortably. But let's get back to why I think Trump is extremely undervalued as a candidate. Another big reason is the common man doesn't give a damn about political correctness. On the contrary, the average dude knows his own faults. He looks at Trump, and he's like, oh, great, he said, grab him by the pussy. Well, I say the same thing in my locker room. Right or wrong, I'm not here to defend Trump or to accuse him of anything, but when the media plays up certain supposed faults of his, it just doesn't resonate with a common man. And even more so, when you have celebrities screaming of celebrities who are making millions of dollars a year, millions of dollars a film, screaming that they're going to move and they're going to leave the country if Donald Trump gets elected, the average guy says, you know what, F it, go leave. They don't give a damn. That is not making them less likely to vote Donald Trump. On the contrary, it helps him. Next up, the average guy, this may not be politically correct for me to say, the average guy that's voting is not that smart politically. He doesn't have a real grasp of the issues. The average guy doesn't know what's going on. What does the average guy do when he's listening to debate and he doesn't understand what a candidate's saying? His natural response is not going to be, oh, I'm stupid, I don't understand that. It's going to be, oh, these politicians, what are they talking about? They just beat around the bush, they say things we don't understand, and nothing changes. Trump, they understand. Because to some extent, he's a simpleton. He talks like a simpleton. They understand what he's saying. Let me give you an example. We all remember the debate where Donald Trump calls Hillary Clinton a nasty woman. Do any of us really remember the policy that Hillary Clinton, what they were discussing before he said that? It was something about Social Security, paying into our trust. I guarantee you no one remembers that. All they remember is Donald Trump saying nasty woman. And they love it. People love it. Now, unless he's going to be running against a guy that comes across that speaks in simple terms, someone like Bernie Sanders, where they understand what he's saying. People understand, yeah, I'm going to get free shit. They like to hear that. The polished politician, they don't understand. They don't understand what Ted Cruz is saying. They don't understand what Marco Rubio is saying. They don't understand what Hillary Clinton is saying. They understand what Donald Trump says. Not policy-wise, but it's something that they can get behind. And again, just remember that point. No one remembers the political dialogue that preceded Trump calling her a nasty woman. Everyone remembers Trump calling her that. And to many people that radiated strength. Look at him. He's not the typical guy. I would say the same thing to her. People like that. It shows strength. People like strong politicians. Next up, Trump. Whether he actually believes it politically or he's just saying it, he successfully outflanked the Democrats on certain issues that are supposed to be liberal hallmarks. He has outflanked them on issues like war, where you have, left-leaning media outlets saying, no, you got to stay in Syria, the generals weren't consulted. Now, what we have to understand, what does that mean when he outflanked them? What does that do? Now, back in the day, battles were fought with two armies lined up in an open field, and they just ready, set, they fired at each other, and usually the guy with more folks won. Later on, as armies got smarter, they started to have some strategy involved. When you can outflank your opponent and hit him in his soft belly where he's not expecting you, you can have an advantage. In the Civil War even, they used to line up against each other. And Robert E. Lee, he came up with strategy, the inverted V, outflanking your opponent. Now what it does is when Donald Trump outflanks the left on a single issue to the left, I'm against TPP. What it does is the disenchanted Democratic supporters, the progressive guy that doesn't like Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or whoever's running against Trump as it is. When you give him that one issue, hey, look, Donald Trump is even more to the left on Syria than our candidate. He just doesn't show up to vote. That's all you need to do. And Donald Trump is a master of that. He will give Bernie Sanders some credit. I think Bernie got screwed. Why do you think he's doing that? Because he likes Bernie Sanders? No, because he's playing to that base. Next up, swing states are decided by independents. Most independent voters in today's day and age are the disenchanted folks. Unlike back in the day where the independents were like, I like both candidates, I really can't decide who to vote for. That almost doesn't exist. It's a myth. These independent guys are the guys that feel like, you know what? I keep on saying guys and gals are the folks that feel like no one's going to help me, nothing's going to change. My paycheck ain't improving. But those guys, come election day, I call it the FU vote. And those guys flock to Donald Trump. Because at the last minute, when they don't like anybody, you know what? They at least feel like they're telling the status quo, the establishment. They are giving them the middle finger by just voting for Trump. And that's why Donald Trump has an advantage with the independent voters. And in the swing states, those independent voters go a long way. And probably the biggest reason is that the Democratic base simply, unless they're really behind the guy, they simply poll better than they vote. Just look at it. Just take a look at the African American community. Again, I'm not here to be political. The average African American, I guarantee you, when you poll them, they're like, yeah, Democratic, yeah, Hillary Clinton. They don't show up to vote. They're just percentage-wise. Hispanics, minorities vote less. They just don't show up to the polls. And you know who does show up? And you know who? So the black guy polls well, doesn't vote well. The FU guy that's going to end up in the Trump circle, when he's polled, he's not going to say I'm voting for Trump. He doesn't like Trump. But the last minute, he's like, F it. He's voting for Donald Trump. Now, I just gave you a lot of reasons why I think Donald Trump will be the next president. Why am I betting on Bernie Sanders? Now again, I probably will bet on Donald Trump. Right now the odds have dipped a little bit. It was about plus 250 a week or so ago, and now it's his popularity has risen a little bit, so now it's down to like plus 175 across a lot of the mainstream books. I'm going to wait for a different number, for a little bit of a better number. But I'm going to have between 10 and 20 units on Donald Trump, depending on the line I can get. I'm going to wait to, I'll tweet out when I find a line I like and I want to get behind. However, I think Donald Trump beats pretty much every candidate he's going to go up against. I think he loses to Bernie Sanders if he runs against Bernie. And I think Bernie has a good chance of coming out of the primaries. And here are my reasons why I'm behind Bernie. The number one reason, whether you like Bernie or not, and I'll be upfront with you guys, I disagree with him on some policy issues. The bottom line is they're popular. They are popular. And across the board, almost on all his issues, he is on the popular side. What I mean by that is, you may think taxing the wealthy is unethical. You may think having someone else pay for your free health care is not right. Maybe you don't want free college. The bottom line is, there are more poor people than rich people. Naturally, a poor guy that can't afford health care likes Bernie Sanders' position, whether you think it's right or wrong. I'm not here to debate that. Maybe I believe that it's wrong to tax the wealthy. Maybe I'm a libertarian. The bottom line is, people like free shit. And over 75% of the population believes that the wealthy aren't paying their fair share in taxes. That's something that resonates with them. And not only that, Bernie Sanders has a lot of weapons. If he ever runs, if he's sitting in a debate, all he has to say is, just Google how much Amazon and ExxonMobil paid in taxes last year. You can Google it and you'll see Amazon has paid 0 taxes last year. The average schmo looks at that and is like, why the hell am I paying taxes? I make 60 grand a year and Amazon doesn't pay a dime. Now again, maybe they've earned it. They have their loopholes. I'm not getting into that. The popular position has always been to get something you didn't pay for. That's just a fact. Next up, money in politics. The average guy thinks the system is rigged. 77% of the population believes that there's too much money in politics. Again, that's a position that Bernie has that very easily resonates with people. And then you have the mainstream Democratic positions where they're just simply more popular. Abortion. More Americans feel abortion should be legal. Now, while the establishment Democrat is going to try to ride the abortion train all day long, the establishment guy is going to get outflanked by Trump on war and on trade. So it's not going to help him. And again, I'm not here to be insensitive or to be insulting. The bottom line is, most of the country believes abortion should be legal. And even the conservatives, who are not going to say it outright, you'll have a large percentage of them saying, all right, abortion, who's doing the abortion anyways? It's the Mexicans, it's the blacks, they're going to be on welfare anyways. Cheaper to just let them abort. Yeah, officially I think I'm going to say that abortion is not good. But they don't give a damn. At worst. Next reason favoring Bernie. In my opinion, the progressive candidates are going to have to fold. First of all, there's just less of them. There are more establishment candidates than progressives. And of the progressive bunch, Bernie Sanders is the clear front runner. And I think you're going to have candidates like Elizabeth Warren fold and support Bernie if their campaign doesn't go well early. The reason for that is that the progressives, the community, they're so desperate for change. They're so desperate to finally be heard, and now they're tasting it. They have a couple of Congress, they have AOC got in, and she's talking, she's making noise, Ilhan Omar's making noise. The progressive guy is going to put a lot of pressure on the candidates to fold because they're all about the issues. The establishment candidate Kamala Harris doesn't owe anything to Joe Biden. Elizabeth Warren owes something to Bernie Sanders. Otherwise, her supporters are going to turn on her. Because if they're perceived as having If Elizabeth Warren is perceived as, now, right or wrong, the progressives eat their own. And if they're going to perceive that Elizabeth Warren is helping Kamala Harris win and she's costing Bernie Sanders' election, she's going to drop out fast or she's going to get an elbow, politically speaking. Next up, money. Now, it's funny. All I ever heard about in an election cycle about who's the front runner comes down to money. Who's got the most money? Bernie Sanders raised $4 million in day one. That's about 3.5 times what Kamala Harris raised the first time. He doesn't take the PAC money, but guess what? He's got a lot of grassroots supporters. He's going to have a well-oiled machine. Don't tell me now, when it's money that's not coming from large corporations, that money doesn't mean anything. Money means a lot. And now Bernie Sanders actually has the money. It's ironic, but he has the money. The next reason I like Bernie Sanders is the same reason, one of the reasons why I like Trump. It's the negative coverage helps him. Now, unlike the last campaign where Hillary was considered such a front runner and Bernie wasn't given a chance until he made the run late. He did close a big gap in the polls late. He was basically ignored. They put the debates on it. They put him up against football games. They didn't want him heard. This time they're not going to ignore him. They can't ignore him because guess what? He's the biggest name in the damn race. So this time they're just going to try to attack him. And attack him. Now, unless they come up with something good, unless they dig up something good, just like with Trump, it's going to backfire. It emboldens his base. It pisses off his base. And they get behind him even more. Now again, if he does lose, for example, let's say it's Kamala Harris that comes out. If that happens, I believe it will be because they bashed down Bernie Sanders so much. And his base is just not going to come out to support Kamala Harris. It'll be worse than last time. For that reason, again, if it's not Bernie, it's going to be Trump, in my opinion. Another thing. Look at his competition. Most of them are paper tigers. Literally, Kamala Harris is the front runner. Why exactly? Because a couple of pundits on TV have anointed her as the front runner. Why? There's no real threat. There's no clear-cut favorite over here. There's no one that I see that's like, oh, they're really the front runner. Another thing. He comes across as an honest guy. Now, there's something to think about this for a second. He does. You may not like him. Let's say, let me ask you a hypothetical question like this. Imagine Donald Trump was a Muslim, an African American, a Jewish guy. Think about the Islamophobia, the anti-Semitism. Love him or hate him, I may love Trump. He's the type of guy that would engender a lot of hatred. Bernie Sanders is not that kind of guy. Bernie Sanders is Jewish. You see any anti-Semitism because Bernie Sanders is Jewish? If Bernie Sanders was a Muslim guy, you think it would be Islamophobia? No. The reason for that is simple. Whether you agree with his positions or not, he at least gives the impression that he's being morally honest with you and he's trying to do the right thing. He just wants to help people. Now you may say, hey, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Yeah, it's not I'm a millionaire. It's not my fault that I don't have to be paying these guys for their free college. I paid for my own college. But you're not going to, he comes across honest and as a good person. That's an advantage. He just comes across as an empathetic guy. Next up, number 7, I think I'm on. He outperforms polling. We saw that against Hillary. And I study all the numbers. Generally, on average, if he was polling at a certain percentage in a state, he outperformed his polling projections. He's going up against some folks that historically don't. Joe Biden, love him or hate him, he has consistently underperformed from his projected poll numbers. That's just a fact. Bernie Sanders has overperformed. Number 8, he polls well with independents. The last election cycle, in the head-to-head polling, he was beating Trump by like 10 to 15 points. Hillary was beating him by like 3 to 4 points. The reason for that, you just look at the numbers. It was independent voters. The FU guy wasn't going to vote for Trump. He was going to vote for Bernie Sanders. Now, obviously, there are some drawbacks to Bernie Sanders' candidacy. We know that the mainstream establishment is going to do whatever they can not to have him elected. If you ask me, honestly, gun to my head, I think they'd rather have Trump win again, as long as it's not Bernie. He hurts them financially, politically. I won't get into all the details of why. And his biggest problem is the socialist tag word. Now, although I just went on and on about how his positions are popular, no one likes the word socialist, because that has the sound of failure. People know, oh, right away, all you need to do is have some guy on TV scream Venezuela, Venezuela. And that's a big turnoff. So there are some disadvantages, but hey, at 25 to 1, when I think Trump will beat most of the other guys, and I can't see the path for him winning, I'm going to have to dabble. I'm going to put 5 units on Bernie Sanders at 25 to 1 to be the next president of the United States. And I'm going to bet between 10 and 20 on Trump. The Bernie Sanders bet I'm locking in now because I think those odds are going to drop. And again, you may have the opportunity to hedge out of it at a later date if if the race narrows and he's hanging around there. All right, good luck. Now let's cash again.